And welcome to another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Stables Media. Taylor Phillips here, along with Ed Smith and Frank Basner. My opening statement, a lot of turmoil is being brewed up at the University of Michigan, according to a couple ESPN reports, while the Lions get their 2021 NFL regular season underway on a sour note as usual, except with a late comeback. Ed, what is your opening statement? Then we'll go to Frank.
My opening statement for this week is between the Wolverines taking care of business against Washington, the Spartans having the start they've had to the season, and now you can say with whatever the heck that game was at Ford Field today, it's good to say that football is officially in full swing here in the state of Michigan.
All right. Frank, what is your opening statement?
Well, my opening statement this week is we saw both Michigan and Michigan State take care of their business. Michigan State also having another guy step up to the plate this week. And also, the Lions, even though they lost, there is something different about them. We'll get into that a little bit later.
Yep. But before we get started, our show is sponsored by the Viget Sports mobile app, where great fans cover. Download it from the Apple App Store or Google Play. Sign up and type in the referral code STABLES for Stables Media. That's the Viget app, VigIt. Referral code STABLES with a capital S and the rest of the letters being lowercase, including the letter B as in billionaire. Also a shout out to Cali Tickets for sponsoring the Detroit Sports Rag. Follow Jeff Moss, the creator thereof, on Twitter at HowAboutIt91. Scour his articles at DetroitSportsRag.com and visit CaliTickets.com or call 877-225-8425 to purchase tickets to go see one of their featured events. Now, let's go ahead and recap that Lions game earlier today. They lost 41-33 to the San Francisco 49ers. It was tied at 7 early in the game, and then the 49ers took the lead again and then started to pull away. They led by as many as 24, 41-17. We thought this game should have been over with already at that point, but then the Lions slowly started to chip away. But when the Lions had that chance, they were near that 49ers red zone. Jared Goff and his offense just didn't even try for the end zone late. I'm not sure why, but anyhow, Jared Goff, 352 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 pick six. Jeff Okudah defensively is still awful, but I'm even reading one of Moss's tweets about Dan Campbell showing good game management and fourth down efficiency overall. Some of his play calling, of course, not very smart, but overall game management has been pretty good. We'll start with Ed, and then we'll go to Frank. Ed, just give us your best analysis on that game, please.
Well, there's so much to delve into. First and foremost, concerning the fact that this was what could be considered going back to last season. This was the first game back, not only in front of with fans for the regular season game, but a packed crowd nonetheless. So you were able to hear the Ford Field faithful being as loud as humanly possible when they need to be, when they could be, to help give that extra oomph, that extra ounce of support. We saw, I think, in my view, how much of a difference it made early on in terms of setting a tone for the Michigan game. Obviously, between the discrepancy between what we saw in the college game the night before and then, of course, the pro game today were very stark. But in terms of what the Lions were able or were not able to do, first and foremost, they couldn't get a stop. Could not get off the field on third down. The same issues that we've seen plague this team over the years. We know for a fact that they were not going to go away instantly overnight. That was going to take time. But, between not getting those necessary third down stops, especially, when we saw what was in the third quarter, what it was, when it looked like the Lions were in a chance to get off the field, get some momentum back, only down on 21, and then all of a sudden, boom, 38-10 because, Jeff Okudah, as much as I want to like the guy, I think he's a nice kid and all, but day by day, game by game, week by week, and now apparently year by year, it's starting to look more and more that just like apparently most of the other picks made by Bob Quinn during his tenure turned out to be a whole lot of nothing. I mean, when you look at the list, when you see guys like Tease Tabor, for example, on that list of names of players not being able to pan out or do or live up to expectations based on how high they were picked. Frankly, it seems like the only noteworthy or notable amount of success of draft pick that I could see so far. I don't want to, be too judgmental early on DeAndre Swift, but so far it seems the only one that seems to be worth a damn, giving out the Quintricia era, was T.J. Hawkinson, who, by the way, was able to notch his 100th career reception as well as in addition to a touchdown today earlier on. So good production from him at least. It shows that Goff does have a reliable target to throw to, as opposed to say, in addition to guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, Quentin Cephas, for example, that helped spur this comeback on. I think Goff, in terms of his confidence, we saw in the first three quarters the worst aspects of the most negative aspects of his game really come out. The short passes, not really going down the field, taking shots like we just saw Stafford do on this first drive in the Sunday night game against the Bears.
I saw that bomb, man.
Yeah, I was like, oh God, I already miss you, Matt. But between all that and
even Moss was rooting for Stafford.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you couldn't find a picture perfect, even more better start for Stafford for his tenure as a Ram. But I digress. Going back to Goff and the Lions, Goff was able to, showcase some of his weaknesses, such as if you bring pressure on him, he just freezes or, gets hurried up or scared, whatever the case may be. But if it affects his performance, I think the 49ers did their homework. They know how much bringing pressure makes an effect on Goff and how he performs, of how he had his little regressions year by year since the Super Bowl appearance with the Rams, particularly in play action, particularly when under pressure. So it's good to know, well, bad for us, but good for San Fran that they were to do their homework on that. And I know the Lions are trying to say, we were prepared for both quarterbacks. We were prepared for them to use both their QBs. And you can do all the preparation that you want, but if you don't have the talent amongst your unnecessary pieces on your roster to help slow down the production that we saw from 49ers today, it ain't going to mean diddly. So we saw that in full force for the first three quarters. I think San Fran, obviously, when you're up that much, they took their foot off the gas. But if there is a but here in terms of showcasing positive examples of what this game looked like, we saw the attitude and the mentality of this team on full display. No, things were not going their way, and they were obviously getting frustrated, but they didn't quit. They didn't lay down. They didn't just, let's tuck it in and just get ready for next week. No, they fought. They epitomized what their coach, say what you want about the whole kneecap speech and everything, but that was a picture-perfect example on display of what this team, of what Dan Campbell was talking about, that mentality, that type of perseverance, that type of thing, that teams you want your team to have. They showcase that in this game for sure. So the fact that when you think, okay, it's going to look nice and get some garbage time touchdowns, make the score look not as bad, but then when you say, oh crap, they recovered an onside kick, they got back down the field, they preserved their timeouts. That was one of the things that Moss was giving Campbell credit for. Like, hey, he didn't waste those timeouts. He knew when to use them. And like, for example, when they were really down and, okay, it's still an impossible task, but hey, they went for it on fourth down instead of punting away, not showing that white flag mentality. And it almost paid off for him because between the lucky breaks, the onside kick, and forcing a friggin' fumble on the same play where if the San Francisco wide receiver just falls down after getting the first down, the game's over. But luckily for us, Trey Flowers popped the ball out. Fans went crazy. We got the ball back and still had a timeout left to use.
Heck of a defensive play.
Yeah, well, that's why you pay Trey Flowers the money that he asked for, that he got eventually. That's why he's a captain, one of the captains on your team for plays and moments like that. So props to Trey Flowers on that account. And then it just went down to the wire, and even though obviously they didn't get the necessary tying score, they didn't get what they wanted at the end, it still showed their perseverance, their mentality as a team. And frankly, even though San Francisco won, the Lions still had some quality moments in themselves where, okay, you could say they had to have a big chance here to turn it around or even put themselves in position to win. I call that a pro wrestling 101 type of thing where, there's an official winner of the match, but both opponents still look strong. So even though there's negatives and positives to look at, there's still some things you can point at that were good in regards to those Lions' performance today. Oh, can't believe I forgot to mention this: the running game. Jamal Williams, for example, but definitely the rushing attack was as productive as possible. Penei Sewell, what he did on the offensive line, as you really didn't hear his name being called, that means he's doing his damn job. If I was Taylor Decker, I'd be feeling very worried about my spot. Speaking of jobs, by the way, because if it keeps on like this, if Sewell keeps performing like this, the comfort level of how he can do at left tackle compared to right tackle, I'd be sweating a little bit if I was Mr. Decker, in case I don't get Dak Prescotted.
Yeah. In other words, screw Taylor Decker. No offense, but Penei Sewell is our new left tackle on the offensive line, if you know what I mean.
That was the spot he performed best at when he was at college, and we saw how he made dividends here. I mean, for the fact he got beat by Nick Bosa on one, maybe two plays the entire game. And Nick Bosa, listen, some will make an argument that that Nick is arguably the better Bosa brother, and Sewell more than held his own against him. So that's a sign of things to come for the big boy. I'm all for it.
Oh man, Sewell's a machine, and Brad Holmes, their general manager, can draft. Period. Even better than Bob Quinn. Way better.
Yeah, Bob Quinn, who's starting to look more and more like Ken Holland day by day. Oh my God.
I know, right? I know a loss is a loss, but the Lions, I think, have got some momentum. By the way, Dan Campbell, the way he used his timeouts, it was great, very great. That's why Moss gave Dan Campbell credit on Twitter at How About It 91. So Dan Campbell, like I mentioned before, the way he used his timeouts, really good. His game management, fourth downs. I mean, some of the play calling wasn't that great, like I mentioned before, but not all of it was not great. There were at least a few play calls that weren't too shabby. So Frank, will pass it on to you. What do you think?
Well, Ed really took a lot of the words out of my mouth. I think I'll start with Penei Sewell first, because when I heard he was starting at left tackle, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, he's going to be in for a rough go having to go up against Nick Bosa. And,
I never had those thoughts.
It was a pretty good showing for him, given the fact that Bosa is considered one of, if not the best defensive end in the NFL, and Sewell is making his first start. So, that's something he's got to build off of, and maybe that builds his confidence up in the future. As for the epic comeback that almost happened, as much as I have believed that Kyle Shanahan, the 49ers head coach, is a choke artist, given the fact that he was on the Atlanta Falcons when they blew their 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl, and he also blew a big lead in the Super Bowl when they played the Chiefs, I do have to give credit to the Lions for not quitting, because if this would have been a Matt Patricia coach team, they would have quit and said, forget it, we're done. But you know what? Like Ed said, they've embodied what Dan Campbell has preached. Said, you know what? We may not be as good, but we're going to go down fighting right to the bitter end. And, I kind of liken this to what the Pistons have done with Troy Weaver as their GM. where year one, things weren't good, but guys competed, they played hard, showed some fight, just didn't have enough horses to get it done in the end. So that's what I think is different about this Lions team. They will show their fight, they're going to compete, guys are going to develop, and we'll see where it goes from there. And once Brad Holmes is able to get another draft class in, bring some guys in via free agency, we'll see where things go from there. But, there are some positives to take. Obviously, there were some negatives, but I think really there's some more positives than negatives. There's just
Yeah.
a different vibe, especially with the way they came back.
Yeah,
And credit to Jared Goff too, because remember he had a bad pick six. That could have shattered his confidence for the rest of the game, but he held on through it, and he made some real solid throws in that fourth quarter. That gave you a little bit of recollection and remembrance of what Stafford used to do, but still, good on Goff for not putting his head down and still powering through, because of what he almost gave us a great comeback.
Yeah. Jared Goff, again, 352 passing yards. Yikes. That's almost 400. 3 touchdown passes. The one pick six that Ed just touched on. But overall, other than that, Jared Goff had an overall good performance, if not great. He finished strong, he almost finished strong. Just threw it away as time ran out on 4th down, or with 15 seconds
And that was
left.
the one example of San Francisco's pressure getting through, and it came at the right moment, the right time for them. I think Frank Ragnow mistimed one of the interior defensive linemen making that switch on the inside with a technique, attacking one of the gaps, and by the time Ragnow was able to get around to it, it was just too late.
Yeah. Frank Ragnow just didn't push enough weight. Yeah, like you mentioned before, I'm getting tired of Frank Ragnow. I mean, I wonder if Penei Sewell was.
I won't say that. I mean, Ragnow was one of the best overall performing offensive linemen last year. He made one probably bad adjustment mid-move, but it was at the very end of the game. But like I said, if you took care of business earlier on, not made the mistakes you did as a team overall, I'm not going to pinpoint the entirety of the blame of the loss on one player or one play. This was a combined team effort between Goff struggles to Jeff Okudah. Oh my God.
The real scapegoat. Right. The real scapegoat was just the defense overall. They gave
the
up
defense. When you give up 41 friggin' points,
34. Yeah. Goff's pick six was not on the defense. They gave up the other 34.
Right.
So if you do the math. So yeah. Did you guys see Aaron Glenn yell right at Jeff Okudah's face?
Yeah, apparently Okudah was giving him some lip or something for some reason, but this was immediately after he got burned by that touchdown. And like I said,
not one but two passes.
So it's again,
at least one touchdown.
Again, if things do not pan off the way it is, you're going to be looking at that list of Bob Quinn draft picks, and you can easily compare it to what the last few years of Ken Holland's regime was, the way it's going to look like between Brad Holmes getting his guys, his system, his players, while still trying to give guys like Okudah a chance. But I'll say this. If you ever draft a quarterback with the 3rd overall pick, your expectation has to be, okay, he must be the next Deion Sanders, because that's the expectation that you're putting on him by showing the confidence you have taking that high to begin with. And I know it's fair or unfair, but if you're not getting that type of production and it's going on 3, this is year 3, soon to be going on year 4. If you don't see that type of progression and evolution in your game, I wouldn't be surprised if Brad Holmes says, hey, we may have to look somewhere else with this in terms of improving our secondary, because, man, those guys got gashed with chunk play after chunk play after chunk play. That was another real big difference, too. Give it a multiple plays of, with 20 yards or more production from San Fran's offense alone. Oof.
Yeah, it's just a shame for such an elite college football player to be drafted at 3rd overall by the Lions and then just utterly collapse, not only in your rookie year, but in week 1 of your sophomore year. That's just, man, not even improve or adapt at all, ever, after playing so well on the college level with the Ohio State Buckeyes, for example. Wow. So that's one of the concerns on defense that has to be addressed, period, and first and foremost. So the Lions don't play until next Monday on ESPN Monday Night Football, when they head to Lambeau Field to take on the Green Bay Packers at 8:15 p.m. So let's analyze this game. Aaron Rodgers earlier today threw 2 interceptions, I think, but I don't know how the Packers did, but
I believe
they got smashed.
They were
got
losing
smashed
38-3 last I checked to the Saints.
Yeah,
Oh,
they got smashed Roman Reigns style. That's how bad it was.
Hell yeah. Uh-huh.
It was
definitely.
They didn't even get a touchdown in the game.
Oof.
Yeah, the
So
Packers home. But once the Packers return home for their home opener, they'll be energized, and the Lions had better be ready.
Well, you would hope so, because for all intents and purposes, this has been the indication this will be Aaron Rodgers' last dance season, so to speak, with Green Bay. So
He's getting old.
Yeah, but still, in terms of how he performed and how he made certain throws today, it got some people wondering and even putting that theory out there. And normally I'm not one for conspiracy theories under extremely rare circumstances, but it got some people talking like, is Rodgers really going to tank this season potentially, because it shows how much badly he wants out of Green Bay. So that still yet remains to be seen. As I just saw Stafford deliver another bomb here on 3rd down. But still, I think it's as bad as things may be in terms of the fractured relationship between Rodgers and the front office and the organization. They're still a better team than the Lions are. So I expect this to be an ugly game, back and forth game. But at the end, the Green Bay Packers, they're a better team. So whatever the spread is, if it's 3, if it's 7, I would take that. Oh, another touchdown. Hi, Stafford. I will take the Packers of Green Bay, as they would say in Coming to America. The Packers of Green Bay to get the victory over the Lions. I'll say by, knowing how bad that defense was today, Rodgers should have a good bounce back. Let's go 34-20. Yeah, 34-20 Green Bay.
34-20 is Ed's Viget predicted scoring.
That's my Viget score. Yep.
The Viget predicted scoring predictions, brought to you by the Viget app. Frank, how about you?
Oh, my Viget predicted scoring prediction, I'm going to go Packers 38, Lions 24. Given the fact that Green Bay's defense kind of looked just as bad as the Lions defense did today, I still think Aaron Rodgers is going to be pretty ticked off after a crappy performance in week 1. I think he's going to want to bounce back and get a win. And so I'll go 38-24, and that's my prediction.
Keeping up with the whole Lads Dance theme, hopefully maybe Rodgers will take it personally next week.
Wouldn't surprise me if he did.
All right, I'll just go 36-22, or should I say 36-23, actually, to how about 37-23 Packers is my Viget predicted scoring predictions. I'm going to go somewhere in between, not quite in the middle. That's
right, because you got to take consideration of how the kicking game could look too, because there was a missed field goal, I believe, earlier today as well. So it ain't easy replacing guys like Matt Prater or in the instance even years further back, or guys like Jason Hanson. They don't necessarily grow on trees, and the Lions special teams are finding that out the hard way, unfortunately.
Yeah, the field goal unit, Austin Seibert. Thank you very much. He was at least 1 for 2 today in field goal attempts. So that's Lions. The Michigan State Spartans took good care of the Youngstown State Penguins, 42-14 at Spartan Stadium in East Lansing. Ed, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Frank. Ed, What did you make of it?
They did what they're supposed to do against teams like this. They didn't fool around. They didn't do what Miami did or what Florida State did against Jacksonville State, for example. They handled their business. They handled it at home. It's not as much to expect, but still, for Mel Tucker, it would have been a bad mark to have a loss of this caliber in his second season, even though it's early on, but still, you don't want to have that expectation of, oh my goodness, we can't even beat these type of lower level, C-level, programs and teams. So no, nobody's expecting Michigan State to contend for a Big Ten title this year. But you want to see that progress, see the performance of players, how your offense does, for example. And they were able to get that going, be more consistent, finish drives, get points, as you obviously see by the final score would indicate. And yeah, if I was Mel Tucker, I would be pleased. Obviously, there's still ways to go, but you're still pleased with the progress so far. They're taking care of business, taking care of the ball, and they're not being stupid. And thus, when you don't play stupid, you get rewarded with victories. Simple.
You earn them. You earn them. Frank?
Well,
just an easy win.
Oh, well, yeah, it was, but I was kind of a little bit surprised as to who the star of the game was. I mean, after week one, I'm thinking, oh, Kenneth Walker is going to be the man that does most of the work, and he didn't really have to do as much, although he had a couple of nice runs that did get a touchdown. I was really impressed with the way Peyton Thorne played. And also, I have to give a ton of credit to Jay Johnson for dialing up a flea flicker on the first play from scrimmage to Jaden Reed, resulted in a touchdown. That's twice in a row that Michigan State has scored on their first play from scrimmage in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, that happens in consecutive games. Michigan State fans are going to be expecting that to happen consistently. Here's what I'll say. Pump the brakes. While it's cool to see that, that's not going to happen every time.
No, not necessarily.
So, obviously, Thorne accounted for 5 touchdowns. He threw 4, also ran for 1. Jaden Reed had 2 long touchdown receptions. And also, how about the halfback screen game? The second game in a row that you have a screen pass to a halfback and it scores. This week it was Elijah Collins. It was Jordan Simmons the previous week. So that's something that you didn't see too much out of the D'Antonio era. Maybe once in a while, but now you're seeing it a little bit more. And
Speaking of Jordan Simmons, he had a good game for himself. 16 carries, over 100 yards, 121 to be specific. So it was nice to see MSU showcase that balanced running attack, knowing they don't have to, say, for example, rely on Kenneth Walker, the third, to do too much as their halfback. So for if you're an MSU fan, that's a good thing to see. You want to compare it to how Michigan gets things done with Haskins and Corum, and we'll get to those guys in a minute, trust me. But if you're an MSU fan, you happy with what you saw from your rushing attack so far this season, knowing you have multiple options at that spot.
You're absolutely right, Ed. And I mean, on the defensive side of the ball, I think Jeff Petrowski is really becoming a name that's surprised a lot of people. He played a lot at the defensive end, obviously, with both Drew Jordan and Drew Beasley out due to injury on Saturday. Him and Michael Fletcher had to step up. So Petrowski really had himself a nice game. He was in the backfield being disruptive, and I know of at least 1 sack that he got. And also, how about Xavier Henderson's one-handed interception, reminiscent of what Curtis Drummond had in 2013. So all in all, it was a very, very strong performance from Michigan State. Obviously, there's some things that got to get better too, like allowing long drives by your opponents. I mean, Youngstown State scored in a couple of long drives, but
deep passes.
Long passes. Obviously, the corners got to get better. It's going to be tested next week when they go on the road to play Miami at high noon on ABC. So it'll be a chance to make a statement. So, and I see that Taylor has posted our banner for the Viget predicted score. I will actually start that off saying I had this pegged as a loss for Michigan State and kind of a big one to begin with. But seeing that it's at noon and not like a night game or 3:30
that doesn't
game.
matter.
Yeah. Well, but anyways,
Not to mention, pardon the interruption, this is a Miami team that got the brakes beat off them by Alabama and barely scraped by a win against Appalachian State.
Yeah,
just barely. So
yeah. I mean,
not going to be a route loss then, Frank.
yeah. I mean, given the way Michigan State has played their first 2 games, and given how Miami has not looked anything close to the U of the 80s or the early 2000s, I think Michigan State does have a legitimate shot to win this. Now, I honestly don't think that they're going to. I think it's going to be a close game, but I think Miami wins it, say, 37-34. That'll be my Vegas predicted score. But Michigan State will show that they're going to come. They're going to compete. They'll have a chance to win, but I just think Miami is a bit of a different animal than Northwestern or Youngstown State.
Yeah, all Miami has to do is just keep going deep with those passes. Ed, what's your Vegas predicted scoring prediction on MSU at Miami?
My Vegas predicted score, around the same line. It's going to be I think this is going to be a 1-score game. The current spread for this is Miami 6.5. I think it will remain, if not at that exact spread, at least balloon out to say 7, maybe 8 points. Either way, I see this coming down to being a 1-possession score type of game. MSU, I feel, betters their chance of win by utilizing their advantage in the running a game, using Simmons, using Walker, using whatever and however they can do to get that offense production. Because if you have a solid running game, you can burn clock, establish long drives, tire the opposing team's defense, et cetera, et cetera. So I think limiting the amount of possessions that the Miami offense can get helps them out, especially in front of a home crowd that wants to see a much better performance after the last 2 games. So if you're MSU, you come out, you establish the run, keep the turnovers down, and we'll see what happens. If you get the win, great, but you shouldn't be too shocked or disappointed if you don't. So by that, I'm going to say my Vegas predicted score, I'm going to go MSU 21 and the Hurricanes of Miami 28.
28-21 Miami. I'm going to go Hurricanes 31, MSU 24 by exactly a touchdown. So those are Vegas predicted scoring predictions for the Spartans and the Miami, Florida Hurricanes. Now, for Michigan's win, the Wolverines being the Washington Huskies 31-10 at the Big House last night. Running back Blake Corum, a touchdown hat trick on 171 rushing yards, and the defense just kept holding Washington off the board. Only a field goal and a touchdown just late that second half. Ed, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Frank. Ed, take that away.
Much. Oh, my goodness. I had a bountiful feast with this game between the defense continuing their effort from last week. Aiden Hutchinson looking like an absolute beast out there, shredding pass blockers, going against guys that are not bad slouches themselves, particularly on Washington's offensive line. Hutchinson was not having any of that. He had his way with them, getting strip fumbles, getting sacks. He was hounding, Morris for Washington the entire game. It felt like, essentially, whether he was hitting him, sacking him, or getting close to hitting him. I cannot speak enough of how good of a job Aiden Hutchinson did. He really improved his draft stock, in my view, in this one. And, I'll probably catch some flack for this, but I blame myself to a degree, because I do fall into the trap of year by year. If I see a Michigan player do very well at a position I know the Lions need, whether it be Jordan Lewis one year or Devin Bush another, I'm experiencing the same feelings now here with Aiden Hutchinson and thinking, man, how well could he be on that D-line, with Onwuzurike and Flowers and the rest of the guys. Oh, and McNeil as well. That'll be a real benefit that can help produce, get after the quarterback. which can turn stifles the offensive production. But a man can dream. The Pistons were able to able to draft Isaiah Livers, who say this can't happen. But that was Hutchinson, and that was the defense in general. What they gave about a garbage time touchdown when the game was clearly well in hand. There's really no much you can complain on the defensive side of the football. Even special teams, between getting good returns that gave you solid field position when the game was more closer early on. Jake Moody, give big props to him, hitting a big 52-yard field goal. That's his new career long. It establishes and shows that, hey, you have confidence in your kicker.
He's gotten better as of late.
He has.
To my surprise.
Yeah, he could have made that kick from 60. It was so good. So props to him on that. I don't know, it was something Harbaugh taught him, or he was able to improve on things himself, or a combination. But good on Jake Moody. Now on to the offense. There was good and there was bad, obviously. Let's get the bad out of the way. The play calling was definitely frustrating, particularly in terms of wanting to see Cade McNamara showcase his passing ability with being able to take more shots down the field instead of the little dink and dunk underneath passes, or just go, hey, swing out to the to the halfback, that type of thing. Seeing that consistently all night, I'll admit, was irritating to a degree. The only reason you're not going to hear me go on a tear and having a moan, so to speak, about the offense with the play calling or the passing game in general, is because when you have a rushing attack that produces the way Michigan was able to produce against the Huskies, when you're able to just batter your opponents to the tune of 343 rushing yards on the ground between Corum, the game he had, Hassan Haskins as well with the game he had, and knowing that there's mobility amongst a couple of your quarterbacks at the very least. If you can establish the run, which is a Jim Harbaugh staple, as we all know, it makes things much easier when you can do it at that extent. Now, I do believe Washington, in general, as a team, is overrated. We saw how they performed against Montana, and we saw how they performed this week against Michigan. Now, you don't want to take anything away from the Wolverine defense. They did what they're supposed to do, but for God's sakes, that Washington Huskies team tied, if not set a recent record for Pac-12 teams of going consecutive drives without a score. We're talking touchdowns, field goals, anything. They had like 18 or 19 consecutive drives between this game and last week's game, or they could not produce a single damn point. That's more of an indictment on Washington than it is of how good of a job Michigan did. Now, granted, they did what they were supposed to do. Hutchinson did what he was supposed to do. The defense didn't look stupid. They got off the field when it needed to be, and that Big Ten house was rocking. We want to talk about the fans at Ford Field being in full capacity. You could really hear and feel the difference in energy with that Michigan crowd at Saturday night in Ann Arbor, because you got a couple pre-snap penalties against Washington where it'd be a false start here or delay a game there. So I think having that in their back pocket could mean a starch difference to how the team performs this year compared to last year. But other than minor things between some play calling, wanting to see the quarterback perform more efficiently, I should say. This was as good of a game as you can possibly get, and a good a performance as you could have wanted from a Michigan team at home, at night, primetime audience against a well-known established name and program in Washington. So really not too many complaints for me. Great job performance by the boys in blue.
Yeah. I know. I understand the play calling with the constant running game making me seasick personally, but their offense didn't do too shabby.
No, and it's like the saying goes. Job. Yeah, it's like the saying goes: if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And they were rocking and rolling, having their way with Washington's defense with the running game alone. So yeah, until they can stop you, go do it. It's simple. It's not that complicated. Stupid.
Yeah. Yeah, I did want to mention that one Washington touchdown came very early in that fourth quarter. Washington still had time, plenty of time left on the clock, but Michigan
Yeah, but the way that
killed some time,
yeah.
and then just added that hat trick touchdown by Corum to seal
hmm
it.
Not to mention the way that defense was performing all night in general in front of that
Right.
crowd, they were not going to give that lead up. So it was just, okay, nice, cute. You got a touchdown. Now here comes Blake Corum to stuff it down your face one last final time.
And he does. Frank, I know you
Well,
saw only a portion of it, but do the best you can.
well, I'll actually start on the defensive side, kind of like Ed did. I'll admit I've been very impressed with Aiden Hutchinson, especially since he's playing a different position. He's actually playing more of an outside linebacker than a defensive end with his hand on the ground. And, I wouldn't mind the Lions possibly ending up with him in next season's NFL draft, but that's neither here nor there. On the offensive side, look, Michigan can make their hay running the football. I mean, Blake Corum, he had another great game. Hassan Haskins had a solid game as well. But quarterback play, I think, has got to be a little bit concerning. I know it may have a lot to do with the play calls, as McNamara only threw for, 43 yards. That's not
Yeah,
going to get it done against the big dogs, the Big Ten. And let's be
No.
honest, Washington is not a good football team.
Uh-uh.
They've fallen to 0-2, and I'm not so sure that Jimmy Lake is going to have a very cool seat at the end of this season. I digress. But, I mean, all in all, Michigan went out, they handled their business and did what they needed to do. Now, with Northern Illinois coming up next week, that's somewhat of an interesting game because I really don't know which version of NIU is going to show up. The team that either beat Georgia Tech in Atlanta or gave up a 50-burger to Wyoming and lost. I mean, it is worth noting. You guys remember Rocky Lombardi? He's at Northern Illinois now. And he
oh,
also
joy.
beat the Wolverines in the big house. Now, since we're getting into our they get predicted scores for Michigan and NIU, I don't think that they're going to let him go buck wild again. I think this
No
defense
way.
is going to be a lot more prepared. Here, I think the defensive backs are not going to be playing so soft, and they're going to play a lot smarter coverage. So I'm going to say, while NIU won't be a pushover, I think Michigan wins this one. I'll say 38-14. It'll be my score. And we'll say another big day from both Blake Corum and Hassan Haskins. I'll even go as far as say as they combine for 3 touchdowns on the ground and probably another 300 yards rushing.
All right, 38-14. Michigan, says Frank in his Viget predicted scoring prediction. Ed, your turn. Your prediction, please.
I expect or hope, I should say, that Northern Illinois shows more fight than, say, Washington did on Saturday. But this is essentially, between this and Rutgers the following week, this is your chance to get yourself, and at least in terms of K. McNamara and the offensive play calling, get yourself shored up because your next test is coming. Wisconsin will be waiting on you, but that's only in a couple weeks from now. But for this game particularly, yeah, Rocky Lombardi, you can have all the golden horseshoes he wants. He ain't winning this game. This defense is locked in. They'll be coming to pound. They'll be coming to feast. And between that and the rushing game still being consistent, I'm expecting another solid performance, another solid victory. And if I would pick a score, my big predicted score would be, I'll go Michigan 41, NIU 17, excuse me, 41-17.
All right, 41-17 is Ed's Viget predicted scoring prediction in favor of Michigan. I will go Michigan 42 and Northern Illinois 17. I'll go 42-17 Michigan over Northern Illinois. Michigan's offense is just too much for Northern Illinois' defense. Of course, Northern Illinois is just another American Conference team, just another Husky team that's struggling, just like Washington, but although they both give fight against
I'll give
better
the Mac
teams.
I'll give the Mac credit though, at least a little bit. Even though they still blew it, but they had Notre Dame on the roads. But so there's that. They almost gave us a chance to point and laugh at the Irish. So I'll give them kudos for that.
All right. So yeah,
Same here.
yeah, there you go. Yeah. So yeah. I mean, how good is Notre Dame? I couldn't even tell. And is that Wisconsin game on the road in Madison?
For Michigan,
Yeah.
yeah,
it
it is. Yes.
It's going to be their first road test of the year, I believe.
Yeah, and I expect that the way they keep going, because I think they just got updated to number 25 now in the rankings. If they keep it up, that could be a potential.
Wisconsin is
Michigan.
25th.
That
Michigan.
No.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and Whiskey is at 18, I believe, currently. If those two keep it up, that could be another
Wisconsin?
potential. Yes, that could be another potential ranked head-to-head matchup between those two teams, which can turn gains more attention. Another potential Saturday night primetime game or whatever. So again, much like we saw with Washington, a lot of the nation's eyes are going to be on that Michigan-Wisconsin game, and we all know what happened the last time they faced each other. It was bad, really, really bad. So you hope for a better result and a better showing this time around. But again, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Hey, I'll say this: at least Ohio State lost
against Oregon. Oregon is kind of an elite Pac-12 team, but my God, Ohio State. I know it was a battle they're in Columbus.
If there is something to look at potentially,
Oregon
if you want to
obviously won in Columbus. Wow.
Yeah, if you want to potentially scout of what Michigan could do against the Buckeyes, it would be the running game, because Oregon ran all over them, and that was in Columbus. So if you can keep up the production consistently from your rushing attack, that could be one element of your game plan to use against OSU.
Yeah.
One thing I will mention that I have said multiple times before, Mario Cristobal, Oregon's head coach, he has transformed Oregon. They're not the Chip Kelly, Mark Helfrich team that was just going to line up and try and outscore and outrun you. I think that they're turned into more of a team that they can also beat you in the running game with speed, but they can also line up and maul you in the trenches too. I mean, Panay Sewell, somebody who was coached by Cristobal even.
Bingo!
Yeah, and also should mention that Oregon won that game without two of their best defensive players, one of them being Kayvon Thibodeau, who is going to likely be the first pick in the NFL draft that's not a quarterback. So I guess we just have to give the Ducks a tip of our cap.
Yeah, the Ducks have great coaching too. They must.
All that pays off. All that pays off.
All right. So that's college football. Now to one of our top stories from Dan Murphy of ESPN. The abuse victims of Dr. Robert Anderson sued the University of Michigan over a public speech limit on the Dr. Robert Anderson scandal. Now here we go. This is going to be sickening by U of M. A group of former students, including All-American football player and team captain Henry Hill, filed a lawsuit Thursday morning alleging that the University of Michigan is illegally limiting their attempts to share accounts of the abuse perpetrated by then-team Dr. Robert Anderson. Hill, who played for the Wolverines from 1968 to 1970 and was voted the team's most valuable player in his final season, said he wanted to speak about being abused by Anderson at a meeting of the university's Board of Regents this summer, but was denied. He and 9 others claim in their lawsuit that the board's policy, which limits public comment on any particular subject to 5 speakers per monthly meeting, violates the state's Open Meetings Act and, quote, censors speakers from whom the regents might not wish to hear, unquote. That's thin-skinned. Henry Hill told ESPN, quote, I thought I had a voice. I thought I had a perspective. I was a black captain in that era. I thought I had a perspective that should be heard, unquote. A university spokesman said the school has not yet seen a copy of the lawsuit, but that the board has the authority to establish rules for public comment at their meetings. The university's policy, he said, is consistent with other public schools in the state of Michigan. Hill is one of hundreds of former patients who say they were sexually abused by Anderson during physical exams, the same way Dr. Larry Nassar sexually abused gymnasts at Michigan State University, of when they came to seek when they came to him seeking help for routine medical issues. Prompted by other reports of sexual misconduct in the news, former Michigan wrestler Tad DeLuca raised concerns about Anderson in 2018. A university police investigation found evidence that Anderson had abused several former patients and that other authority figures on campus were aware of his misconduct. The university also hired a law firm to investigate how high-ranking officials at the school and within the athletic department had administrators failed to heed clear warnings about Anderson's abuse. University President Mark Schlissel apologized to Anderson's victims for the doctor's misconduct, and the school said it hopes to settle negligence claims outside of court for more certain, faster relief, unquote. The university said 16 months ago that it was setting up a framework to handle those claims, but it hasn't provided a public update on that process since. More than 100 lawsuits have been filed against the university. Yikes. And nearly 900 claimants entered a mediation process last October. Wow, almost 900? Oh boy, trouble. Hill's attorney, Parker Stinar, said he and his clients can't comment on mediation other than to say it remains ongoing 11 months after discussions began. Hill, who is now in his late 70s and lives in Detroit, is a claimant in the mediation process. He said he was abused by Anderson on multiple occasions while at Michigan. He said at one point he asked the doctor to provide him with a deferment letter to help him avoid being drafted into the Vietnam War. Hill said he had a low draft number and was concerned that being a young black man would land him on the front lines in battle. Anderson provided a letter and Hill was not drafted. Hill said, quote, "I paid for that letter," unquote, referring to Anderson's abuse. Hill said he wants the university to acknowledge what happened to him and many other athletes. He said he'd also like to see more safeguards put in place to prevent similar abuse in the future. Hill said he had hoped to share that perspective at one of the board regents' monthly meetings this summer in hope that it would prompt some form of justice. He said that he followed the proper steps to put in a formal request to speak at a recent meeting, but that he was denied because of the board's policy limiting the number of people who can speak on a particular topic at each meeting. Like, for what freaking reason? Jeez. He said being able to share what happened to him publicly is part of the justice he's seeking. He said, quote, "Just the fact that it gets brought out in a public forum so people can see, to stifle comments and information doesn't seem right for me," unquote. Doesn't seem right to anybody, including us. Jeez. A university spokesman said Anderson survivors have addressed the board at its meetings on a regular basis. Quote, "Additionally, each week the university and members of the Board of Regents receive and carefully review a significant number of email messages and other correspondence from individuals who bring issues to the attention of university leaders," unquote, the spokesman said. Hill's lawsuit asked the court to take action that would allow more speakers to address the regions at their next board meeting. Good man. The board is scheduled to meet again September 23rd. That's later this month, 11 days from now. So we're going to go to Ed and then Frank. Ed, we'll start with you. Just for what reason would the university limit the number of speakers, including the abuse victims, to speak on the Dr. Robert Anderson scandal? For what reason?
That sounds like a tactic, a strategy of either ignoring it, pretending it don't exist, or or I like to call the Donald Trump method of hoping it'll just one day it'll disappear like America. But
Like
that's
the
not
coronavirus,
reality.
for
But
example?
that's exactly. But that's not reality. That's not the reality we're living in now. This story is just not going to just go away. Like poof, like Kaiser Soze. This is a story that is multi-layered. It is frankly took years and decades in the making. In terms of the fallout from this and the revelations of it, this needed to come out. This had to come out one way or another, and eventually it did. Again, it goes without saying of how sickening it is, and was, and is, seeing how this played out, knowing and seeing how Anderson was able to get away with this for years upon years upon years. If you can find any solace that he's dead and can no longer do any of this crap to anybody ever again, but you still feel horrible for the people that had to go through this, whether it be in the 60s or even as late as 2000, as the 2000s potentially. There's no justification or excuses you can make to defend how the university had behaved, especially when this thing first started. I can say that obviously with the blowback, with public reception and reaction to everything that's going around them, they are handling this fallout as best as they possibly can. But there's still more to do in terms of showcasing the true accountability that you claim that you want to have. You can't be doing crap like this. Let them speak, let them get their story out, let them be heard, and let this be as a part of the healing process that can lead to lessons learned and lessons implemented that can prevent this crap from happening again. Simple.
Yeah. Don't be so thin-skinned, University of Michigan. Frank, take a stab at it.
I can't even begin to fathom why the university would be limiting victims to speak on this. Look, I get at meetings, you have time constraints, but this is something that deserves an exception to that rule.
They shouldn't even have time constraints either. That's also cheating.
You mean, Taylor, you mentioned 900 claims. Every one of them deserves to be heard, for crying out loud. Let them speak, and then do what you need to do to fix the damage. It's not going to undo what Dr. Anderson did. I get it. He's dead. You can't punish him. But you know what? There are steps you got to take in the healing process. And just start there. And that's only just part of what you can do. There's other things you got to do related to Bo Schembechler as well. But that's something for another time. So I'll just leave it at that.
All right. Well, not almost 900 claimants, like you mentioned before, and like I mentioned before, as I read there. So the other story we're going to get to right now, the Chris Webber story. The report said from Myron Metcalf of ESPN, Chris Webber received an apology from Michigan Athletic Director Ward Manuel for the 2003 fallout. The investigation about Webber accepting money from former U of M athletic booster director Ed Martin, and then we get an update that Manuel denied that he apologized to Webber this past Friday because Webber had no role, or actually Manuel had no role. Pardon my mistake, but Ward Manuel had no role. he said that he had no role. So we're going to go to Ed Smith and then Frank Vasner. Ed, Chris Webber still deserves an apology, nonetheless.
I don't know. It's hard to say if Chris Webber deserves an apology from the school. I will say he deserves an apology from the standpoint of how they tried to, whitewash and scrub away any mention or any semblance or example of his existence at Michigan. That was wrong. I believe that. I understand the whole lying to the grand jury thing of how, and some of the comments he had made publicly regarding Ed Martin, how, on a related note, that helped cause the fracture in the relationship between C-Web and Jalen Rose that now finally is starting to beginning its own healing process. It is a little bit hard to believe, I can admit, because it's one side giving their perspective and then another saying something different. So you don't necessarily know who to believe per se. But I can say this though. It's more than past time. Chris now, he's been slowly but surely trying to mend that relationship because it was and has been fractured for a long time. I can remember going back to as far as the Fab Five documentary when they interviewed David Brandon and I believe Mary Sue Coleman. It was quite icy to say the least in terms of how, frankly, of how Chris probably felt about the university and vice versa. And that's not even getting to the subject of how the whole, like I mentioned, of the beef between Chris and Jalen. That thankfully, I would say, in regards in between both guys celebrating the hiring and the success of Juwan Howard, the fellow Fab Five member, with the success as the new head coach of the team. Between the basketball team making strides in recent years, not just with Juwan Howard, but also with John Beilein as well. Can never ever forget that, by the way. And now with Chris getting his just due induction into the Basketball Hall of Fame, and even with that moment that we saw on TV after it was announced that he was going to be part of the 2021 class, Chris and Jalen actually speaking to each other, acknowledging each other, showing that brotherhood is still there. So between all of that, I think it's just all part of a process that says, listen, and not to mention the fact that Chris was, I believe, an honorary captain. I don't know if this was at Jim Harbaugh's behest or someone else's behest, but he was to show himself at a couple of football games as an honorary captain the past couple of years. So between all of that, I think this is just an example. It's more than time now to fully welcome Chris back into the Michigan family, and frankly, the whole Fab Five as well. I don't know if you want to say it's a touchy subject about putting the banners back up or whatever. All I'm saying is that team, those 5 players, and what that team was able to do over 2 years in terms of generating excitement, attention, and not to mention, most of all, friggin' money to that school. They deserve their recognition. They deserve their acknowledgement. And as in the words of the head of the table, our tribal chief, Roman Reigns, acknowledge them. It's far damn time now. It's time. Acknowledge them.
Definitely time. Overdue, in fact. Frank, any thoughts on that?
I would say it is time to acknowledge them, especially since both Chris Webber and Jalen Rose appear to have mended fences with each other. Whereas C-Web was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame this past weekend. I think it's time, and no more of this bickering back and forth with Lord Manuel. Give the man his due. Welcome him into the family. I mean, look, say what you will about the Fab Five, but you know what? They did a lot more good things than bad, and given the fact that there are some programs out there in today's college basketball world that are probably a lot dirtier, Kentucky. I'm not trying to point fingers, but
Louisville.
Yes, thank you, Ed. I think it's time to just bring him back in. Say, you know what? We're sorry that this drug out for too long. It's time to be back in and then show where and be true to your roots.
Yeah. So yeah, that's out of the way. So shifting over to Detroit Tigers news, catcher Jake Rogers will likely be out until 2023 after
God.
undergoing UCL surgery.
Oh, his elbow.
Yeah, on his elbow.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Jake Rogers, UCL surgery, likely out until 2023. Yeah.
Which sucks because, they were creating a very nice tandem, I thought, between Rogers and Eric Haas of reliable rotation between your catchers. Now, I don't know if this is going to put more pressure on Haas at the backstop spot, or if they got someone through, in the minors, or they got a good quality, reliable backup right now on the up here at the majors. But yeah, that's a tough
They
one.
they don't have a quality backup catcher. Grayson Greiner is not it. But
yeah,
rumors say that Eric Haas and Grayson Greiner will likely stay put in Detroit, and the Tigers will possibly re-sign Dustin Garneau. So the Tigers are pretty much screwed in that category, except Eric Haas can hit. Grayson Greiner, Dustin Garneau sort of still can't hit.
I'll say this though, they're still giving effort. They just won 3 out of their last 4. They got a walk-off win.
Right, I know.
They got a walk-off win today against the Rays. There's still a couple games.
Robbie Grossman a walk-off walk on the bases loaded.
Yeah, and I mean Cabrera, you saw what he did the other night, getting 9 straight at bats of collecting hits. I don't know if he's going to get the 3,000 this year, but it'll be damn near close. And you see with the team, obviously they want to finish this season as strong as possible. Obviously, the goal is the objective would be
to tank anymore.
Yeah, I think they want to try to get the 500 or at least get close to it, and it showcases the improvement that they've had over the past couple of years for sure. Especially this is year 1 of the AJ Hinch era. So if they can finish in a relatively respectable record in 3rd place of the division instead of last place, and within striking distance of 500, all in all, considering the circumstances of what this team has been now for years, and this is year 1 of AJ Hinch's tenure. I would say that is about as successful of a season as you can possibly get, knowing the limitations you have with your roster space, cap space, and whatnot.
Yeah, Tigers were stuck with all 4 of them. I'm okay with Eric Haas, at least. I'm okay with Jake Rogers, too.
Yeah.
Grayson Greiner, I'm okay. I'm even okay with Dustin Garneau, but Grayson Greiner, even though he's given effort, I mean, still not enough. He still cannot hit much.
I mean, if anything, this may influence their decision of what they do with free agency this winter. They may have to look in terms of looking at a 1-year rental or so of a reliable veteran backup catcher.
Yeah, and what did you guys think of that Moss tweet about Chris AJ Hinch cannot stand Al Avila, and Al Avila is going to get kicked upstairs, and a new GM approved by Hinch will be approved?
I mean, it is important to know that at the very moment it is only a rumor. Now, again,
it's a rumor.
It wouldn't surprise me if to see this confirmed in some way, shape, or form. You just got to see how the tea leaves fall after the season. What does Cheapskate Chris Ilitch, what does he do in terms of giving Hitch what he wants? Because you've seen what he's able to do in just 1 year with guys that are not even his. Give him some more players, give him a little bit more leeway, spend some damn money. Right, quality players, spend some damn money, and say what you want about how things went down in Houston. This guy is a great manager. Okay, he is the perfect guy for this team in so many ways. It's not even funny. So, to me, I'm going to give him whatever he wants, because seeing what we went through with Osmus and Gardenhire, oh my God, I'm keeping this guy around as long as possible.
Yeah, me too. AJ Hinch, cannot afford to lose him. The Tigers need him, like humans need oxygen. like humans need oxygen.
I mean, this is the first
in the immortal
semblance
words Bill
of
Clement.
light. It's the first semblance of light that we can see for this team in a long time. You do not want to go back down in the dark corners of the basement. So please don't muff this up, Chris.
Right. Yeah. Otherwise, we will tell you to sell the team. We will demand that you sell the team. Otherwise.
Yes.
Frank?
Well, I mean, I said what I needed to say last week when you and I were on Taylor, but I'll just say this. I mean, losing Jake Rogers obviously hurts. That he's not going to be back until 2023. So, I mean, Eric Haas, you've got somebody there. Dustin Garneau, he's a decent backup. But I really don't think Grayson Griner is a good option as a backup catcher. So, could possibly see Dylan Dingler promoted down the road. But I think definitely they got to sign a veteran presence as well. Garneau will be a good emergency option, and maybe give Dingler a little bit of time to get some seasoning at AAA before he makes it to the big club. And we'll see if the Tigers can continue to push to finish above 500.
Yep. Still a little closer to playoff contention, but not quite there yet, the way I see it in 2022 in my crystal ball. But we got one more Tigers news report to pass along to our Sports Talk viewing audience. Tigers starting pitcher Matt Boyd goes back to the 10-day injured list to undergo further medical evaluations on his strained elbow. Matt Boyd still has
elbows.
He's becoming injury prone, and he hasn't even developed performance-wise otherwise.
Yeah, it's been quite disappointing.
He's a bust like Jeff Okuda.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, you whiffed on the opportunity to trade him for some assets last year, and now it's coming back to bite you, to say the least. I'll say
that's
this.
on Alavila.
Yeah, and I'll say this though. As much as I would so love to see Justin Verlander back with the Tigers next year, you gotta see how he performs now, because he's coming off Tommy John and he's real long in the tooth now in his career. So I wouldn't expect to see the JV of old, or even the JV that we saw when he first got to Houston. We saw the performances that he had throughout the playoffs that year, how he did against the Yankees and whatnot. That was just 4 years ago. He's older now. He is approaching his 40s, and he's coming off Tommy John. So those are elements that are working against him. But it's at the very least, I would still like to see him back with the team, because I think there's still so much he can provide in terms of, number one, mentoring the young pitchers that we have now. I think Casey Mize would be the perfect understudy for him, as well as Matt Manning to an extent to help calm his nerves in certain situations and moments. And the same can be applied to as well for Mize. But also, the nostalgia. I'm not going to lie. The nostalgia hits would definitely be a factor here in terms of getting the fan support, getting attendance up, that sort of thing. In addition to, the fact that how much money it may cost. I think Verlander may be cheaper to get, I feel, in this instance, because he's coming off of the issues I've already mentioned. But hey, we'll see.
Yes, we will.
Yeah, Verlander. Yep, gotta bring him back if you want to contend. Gotta get rid of Matt Boyd first. So
Carlos Correa too. If you want to contend, Carlos Correa. Look at that guy. Look at him.
Yeah. Yep. So those are all the teams that we have covered. So what we have learned about what we've discussed tonight, the University of Michigan was way too thin-skinned to allow all the rest of the abuse victims, almost 900 claimants, like we mentioned before, to speak the truth on the Dr. Robert Anderson scandal. While the Lions, they made adjustments in spite of the loss. While Michigan just kept doing their thing, but they'll be put to the test in 2 weeks. State, of course, they'll be put to the test as well. But for the Tigers, if they want to contend, just bring Verlander and Correa get rid of Boyd, Grayson Griner, or send him back down to Toledo, and do whatever else you can to contend, because you'll need a lot more than Verlander and Correa. You got to revamp the bullpen. You got to revamp the defense. You got to make sure your defense does not commit too many errors like they have thus far this year. Nico Goodrum, even Jonathan Scope, even Jamer Candelario, but especially Willie Castro. Those four players that I've known have committed too many errors thus far this season.
Not to mention welcoming Spencer Torkelson into the fold as well.
Yeah, true. So that's what I've learned. Ed, what have you learned in terms of all of what we discussed tonight?
What I have learned for tonight is a multitude of things. For one, for the University of Michigan in general, agreeing with Taylor, they have got to get their priorities straight, whether in regards to dealing with this mess with Dr. Anderson, the continued fallout from that, or setting things straight with Chris Webber once and for all. If there's positives to look at, their football team is taking care of business, but it's still things remain to be seen. We got to see what they can do against Wisconsin. Speaking of the football, the Lions, you should be proud of the effort that they showed today. No, this is not going to be a good team by any stretch of the imagination, but I think we're going to see performances and games like this throughout the course of the season that may make things, I'll say at the very least, entertaining to watch. Yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it, because I consider this to be real football heavy packed weekend. So I'm gonna keep up with the theme of doing what we do, close this out football style. And oh yeah, one last thing, Matt hashtag Stafford for MVP. Let's effing go.
Yeah, and if there are things that are entertaining to watch that are much needed to help you win games, use them. Frank, what did you learn?
I'll keep it football related. The Lions, I think, are definitely a lot different. Granted, they're not going to win many games, but they're at least going to compete, and young guys are going to develop. That's at least the hope for me. Michigan and Michigan State, just got to keep taking care of business. MSU's first test is going to come next week in Miami. Michigan's got a couple more weeks to wait before they go on the road to play Wisconsin, and we'll see how they go from there.
All right, that's what we've learned. Except the Lions just need to improve their defense big time. So that's what we've learned. And before we go, this show is sponsored by the VigIt Sports mobile app. The VigIt Sports mobile app, where great fans cover. Use the hashtag #GreatFansCover. But first, on Twitter and Facebook and on social media. Also, download the VigIt app itself from the Apple App Store or Google Play, whichever provider or model you have. Sign up and type in the referral code STABLES with a capital S and the rest of the letters being lowercase, including the letter B as in billionaire, for Stables Media. That's the VigIt Sports mobile app, where great fans cover. Referral code STABLES with a capital S. Also, a shout out to Cali Tickets for sponsoring the Detroit Sports Rag. Follow the creator Jeff Moss on Twitter at HowAboutIt91. Scour his articles at DetroitSportsRag.com and visit CaliTickets.com or call 877-225-8425 to purchase tickets to go see one of their featured events. Gentlemen, excellent job as always. We'll talk next Tuesday night on the 21st at 9 p.m. Eastern on the dot, when we recap the Lions' Monday night football game at Lambeau Field against the Packers. We'll recap Michigan against Northern Illinois and Michigan State at Miami, Florida. So, gentlemen, mark your calendars, set your reminders on your phone, and set your alarms. Another big episode coming up next Tuesday, the 21st at 9 p.m. Eastern on the dot. Until then, Fred Smith and Frank Vasher, this is Taylor Phillips signing off. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DT2Phillips. Follow Ed Smith on Twitter and Instagram at EdSmith313. And follow Frank Vasner on Twitter and Instagram at Frank_Vasner, VHACNER. And follow our show on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at Michigan_Truth. and like it on Facebook as the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. Thanks very much for listening, watching, downloading, and sharing. And remember, the truth is out there. TTFN, ta-ta for now, power to the people. Hit them with a high and we rest our case. Stay out of trouble.